Hey everybody, welcome to Bestie Book Reviews. I'm here with my bestie Mandy, although I think you're on this side.
And I'm here with my bestie Jessica.
So it is time for class to be back in session. This is episode 3 of Romance 101, where we take you back to school and teach you all about them romance tropes that are out there. If you are new to our channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We give away free books here, signed by authors. We do. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So this is our third episode. So this one is Angsty and Emotional Reads. So we're going to be talking about the books that bring the angst or the emotion. So things you need to know beforehand. So I looked up the definition of angst just so that we're all on the same page here. I love a good angst. I love books that bring out emotions. I don't cry. Mandy cries. I'm apparently the ice queen. I can cry in my everyday life. I cry at commercials when I watch TV. I cry for the silliest reasons, but books just don't do it for me. But an angsty romance is a romantic relationships that are fraught with emotional turmoil, conflict, and drama. So basically, this is where the tea is. This is where we all want to sit, is with an angsty read. So I have to be in the mood for it though. It's really
yes.
But the ones that are angsty and emotional are the ones that tend to sit with me the most.
Okay, so question. Did all of the books you're going to talk about make you cry?
No.
Okay. Mine did.
Okay, all of them kind of gave me anxiety, and that's how I feel. I know that I've got that angsty emotional when I feel like that. Oh my gosh, how are we going to get through it?
So you have the anxiety feeling, and I have the tears.
The waterworks.
Okay.
Yes. So that's how we know what we're going to do. These are also the books that, for a lot of them, you're going to want to check trigger warnings because they deal with some heavier topics typically. And Mandy touched on that last week, but you want to touch on it again. Now that we're really getting into it, where you're going to need, if you're new to reading romance or new to reading in general, we're going to pretend that you just don't read. Here's a trigger warning. Here's what they are. Go, you're the teacher.
Sweet. So trigger warnings can happen for a variety of reasons. So I'll talk about a few, and if ever you think that you might have one of those things, then you're going to want to always check the book's trigger warnings. I tend to not really have any, and I'm okay with reading most things. And so for me, sometimes those trigger warnings can also be spoilers. So just know that going in, if you go check the trigger warnings, then it could also lead to a spoiler. Mm-hmm. So just throwing that out there. So some trigger warnings for things that you might see is if there's abuse, whether it's physical abuse or sexual abuse. There could be trigger warnings for rape. There could be trigger warnings for death, whether that be sometimes it's a child or a miscarriage. It could be cancer, that sort of thing. So those are, then there's also trigger warnings for different types of what we would call probably like kinks. So if there's like BDSM in the book, if there's,
breeding,
sometimes there's like
blood
choking, knife play, guns, that sort of thing. So if you're reading Mafia, then you kind of have to know that there's going to be guns in it. So you might not find a trigger warning for that for a Mafia book. Also, if there's like murder that happens in the book, that'll be usually a trigger warning for. And then suicide is another big one that some books touch on.
That's my big trigger right there, is suicide.
Oh, so you won't read a book if it has suicide?
No, I will read it. I just need to be prepared going into it. And it's not because it's just something that for me is hard to read. So it just depends on the situation. It makes me just go, it's just sad. But it's not that I won't read it. It just makes me sad.
And then also there will be trigger warnings for different other types of like kinks where it's like forced sexual things where maybe we're okay with it, maybe we're not in the moment, but that's happening and it's not necessarily labeled rape either. Yeah. So those things will be listed too. Yeah. So I think that probably covers the majority of them. And hopefully that gives you, our viewers, a better understanding of why you might want to check for those trigger warnings. And if you're okay with reading those things, then you should be fine. Some people will stay away from dark books because if they do have a few triggers, then a lot of the times you're going to find that in dark books. So people will just kind of avoid those if that's something. And we will have a lesson for you later on all about dark books.
Yes, we will.
So,
that's coming up here in a couple of weeks.
emotional and angsty sometimes will hit on some of those trigger warnings to really get your feelings going in there. So if you think that's something you might have, then you're definitely going to want to check for those.
And just to elaborate on two things before we really get started, when we're talking about, a lot of the times when they talk about like sexual things, they'll have non-con and dub-con, and that's what they list. And so just so that you know, non-con is non-consent, which that speaks for itself, that you did not give that consent. And then dub-con is dubious consent, where it's not very clear whether she wants it or not, but tends to work out. So you'll see those in the list of triggers. And sometimes when I was new, I'd be like, what's the difference? What is this? I don't understand. So that was one that I had to learn early on when I was reading. So dub-con and non-con.
So do you have any particular order to your emotional angsty books, or are you just kind of throwing them out there?
I'm just kind of throwing them out there. Mine are all more
Me too.
angsty than emotional. I mean, I'll let you know when we get to them what's what, but these are some that I have loved for the emotion and for the angst. And so if you're in that mood to really feel that, or you want to get started in that, these are where you're going to go.
Yes, definitely. This is where you're going to want to start with those. I think it's also important to note that there are a few really popular ones that we chose not to include in this for just the fact that they're super popular. So like The Words by Ashley Jade. You probably are aware of that book, maybe not. So if you're wanting to read a really popular, it's an excellent book that definitely brings emotion and angst. You can definitely check that one out. But this is going to be focused on books that you may not have heard of, that we think really are a great starting point for when you're starting to explore emotional and angsty books.
Yes. All right.
And that's not to say other books don't have the emotion and angst in them either.
No, not at all. These are just, we chose 5 each. So
yes. All right. You ready?
Am I going first?
Yes.
I love how you just throw me in there.
Ready?
Yep. Okay, so the first emotional book that I have for you, this is more, I don't know if this is more emotional or angsty. I think we get a little bit of both in this. But this is From the Embers by Ali Martinez. And so this is about 2 couples. So this is about Jessica and Eason, and then you have Bree and Rob. So when our book starts out, you have these 4 people, these 2 couples. They're both married. Jessica and Eason have 1 child, and then you have Bree and Rob who have 2 kids. Now, Jessica and Bree are best friends, and Rob and Eason are best friends. And Jessica and Eason are having trouble in their marriage. And so what they decide to do, Bree and Rob say, hey, let's have the kids come over to our house, all the kids. We have a babysitter. And then Jessica, let's everybody go to Jessica and Eason's house as far as adults, and let's have a game night. And let's just, have a night without kids and kind of just enjoy ourselves. And so that's what they do. But halfway through the night, while they're playing board games and enjoying each other's company, there is an explosion. A gas explosion goes off in the house. Earlier that day, Jessica gets a dress that she'd borrowed from Bree, and she's wearing it, or it was vice versa. One of them had the other's dress on. So when the explosion happens and Rob wakes up and he sees the woman on the floor, he picks her up thinking it's his wife. And then as he gets close to the door, he realizes it's not, it's Jessica. And he takes her out because he sees his wife on the ground. He's like, I will be right back. And he takes Jessica outside. And when he gets her outside, there is a second explosion in the house. And there's no saving them who are left in the house. So each couple has lost their spouse. And because of this, I think I might have this backwards. Fudge! Eason is the one who saves Bree. Rob and Jessica are left in the house. That's what it is. Rob and Jessica are left in the house. Doesn't matter. It really doesn't, because you'll get into it and you'll realize this. But half of each couple, the husband and the wife of the other couple are left in the house. So you now have a husband and wife who are grieving for their spouses with their children, and they decide to move in together where Easton can help take care of the kids because Bree's husband had a big company that she originally had started, and so she's decided to go back to work to make sure the company doesn't go under during all of this. And so he stays home to be a nanny or to help take care of all the kids. And they start to develop feelings for each other, and things start to come out during this time. But it was so good. It was so emotional. They hate each other in the beginning. They don't get along at all because of things the best friends have told each other, right? The girls and stuff. So, I mean, it was so amazing. It was so emotional. It was angsty. The revelations were just like, whoa, just, and how do you make this work? So I know I screwed up their names, but you know what, guys? You'll figure it out. It's hard when you've got two couples of people's names.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So my first book is going to be a book that I read a very long time ago, and it has still stuck with me. It's called Something in the Way by Jessica Hawkins. And this is about Lake, who is 16 when she meets Manning, who is 23. So in the grand scheme of things, not a huge age difference, but when we take into account that she's only 16, that's significant at this point. So Manning is building a home, working construction next door to their house when Lake finds him. And Lake is like instantly like, oh my gosh, I love him. They have some conversations that really kind of start to solidify how they're both kind of feeling for each other. But Manning is like, oh no, she is too young for me. This is not going to end well. But Lake has a sister who is 19 named Tiffany. And Tiffany has no direction in life. Lake is very studious. She's going to school. She has lots of goals, and their dad is really hard on her on being perfect, where Tiffany has kind of done whatever she wants. She shops all the time. She just really has absolutely no direction and is kind of spoiled. So Manning decides that he really would like to spend time with Lake, but he can't do that because she's only 16. So he kind of starts to spend time with Tiffany to be around Lake, which is where our angst and emotional stuff is going to come in because something happens and Manning ends up going to jail. And when he gets out, he decides to marry Tiffany. Dramatic pause. It is heartbreaking. It is a trilogy. Never once did I get bored. So much happens, but because it's a trilogy, I can't really tell you a lot more, but it takes a long time for this story to work out. And during that time, it is an emotional roller coaster. I loved it.
I have it sitting on my shelf. I just haven't got the balls to read it yet.
Oh, you got to.
I know, I will. It's on the list. I look at it every once in a while and I'm like, don't know that I'm ready for that. Don't know that I'm like, because I know it's going to be good, first of all. So for some reason I put things off when I know they're going to be really good. I don't know. It's a toxic book trait of mine. And then I look at it and I'm like, am I in the mood for that much angst and emotion? Nah, let me go find an alien book. And then there we go. That way. So
it will suck you in. So you have to be ready to commit to 3 books.
Yeah. Yes. There's audio for all 3.
So worth it. So worth it.
Okay. So my next book is a mafia book. So definitely check your triggers if you think you're going to have triggers for, because there's a lot that goes on in mafia. This is a duet, so that means there's 2 books in this series. So it starts with Suffer in Silence, and it's by Kelsey Clayton. So this is about Cage and Saxon. So Cage is our mafia guy, and Saxon is a little bit of an heiress. She's a princess. She is, her grandpa is a part of the mafia. She is not aware of this. She just knows that he's got the money and he's powerful, and he is dying when our book starts out. And so when she is at the hospital, he has a heart condition that they can't do anything about. She's at the hospital. She sees him. She runs into Tall, Dark, and Studley. And there's like a connection between the two of them. And then later she's at a club with her best friend. She runs into him again. And her best friend's like, stay away from that guy. He is trouble. Because the best friend knows who he is. He's well known around town. Well, after Grandpa dies, some things are revealed. And some things are held back from our little mafia guy from Cage. He was supposed to inherit a lot things from the grandpa because he's next up. And when he doesn't get what he wants, he kidnaps Saxon, and he holds her as his captive. Now, a lot of times in mafia, you get where they hold them captive and they're in this room in this mansion and they've got a butler and a maid, and it's like the best, like all of us would sign up to be a captive in that whole situation. This is not the case. The way he keeps her is not he keeps her as a captive. It is not pretty. Yes, she's in a room, but she's in a room with a mattress. That's literally all she has. No clothes, nothing, mattress. And so the first book is very angsty in the way that like it's not easy for her. She does get Stockholm syndrome that's discussed in the book. She does like there's times when she's like raking her nails off. Like it's not fun to read. And then in the second book, as things start to progress, this is when it gets really emotional because there is a big loss that happens and she is trying to process it. And a lot of times we'll also see in books where there will be a big loss and the people, your characters will get over it, like that, right? Like they're just like, oh yeah, I had a day of crying and now I'm good. That's not what happens in this book. She processes and she'll have a good day, then she'll have a bad day. And that is what grief does to you. And that is what happens. And so this gets really emotional because it really is, it really gets it done right. It really does center on the fact that some days are good and some days are bad. And some days you don't want to eat it all. And some days you want to pour chocolate into the peanut butter jar and just eat it with a spoon. And that's okay. So very emotional. Love the series. They're both on audio or the duet. So they are dark though. Just saying.
Okay. My turn?
Yeah.
Okay. So my next angsty emotional read definitely is going to hit more in the feels on this one, but it also brings some angst with it as well. It is a historical fiction. It's called Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. And this is about Angel. And again, this is going to have some triggers. Angel is sold into child prostitution. And from there, she ends up in a brothel. So this is back like in Gold Rush times that this is happening. She ends up in this brothel and she is beautiful. Like all the men that come to this town want a chance with her. So you have to like enter this lottery and all this stuff. So she's making a ton of money for the brothel and just really living kind of a miserable existence. And Michael sees her one day and he feels that God is telling him, this is the woman that you're going to marry. He is like, sure. But he keeps having this feeling. And so he's like, okay. So he goes in and tries to buy her out of prostitution, brings her home with him. And Angel just really, because she has been in this situation for so long that she just really struggles with these feelings of feeling unworthy and she has fear. And so their relationship really is rocky at first because she keeps waiting for like the bad to happen. And so this is a story. The movie is also fantastic. I'll just throw that out there. But the book I feel like is always going to be so much better. But you can definitely read the book and watch the movie and just it's incredibly powerful. So it's just about God's redeeming love and how Angel works through all of these things that have happened to her to eventually get to her happily ever after. But it really brings the emotion. It is so incredibly good. And I absolutely loved it.
Okay.
Brothels and Jesus.
Brothels and Jesus. Yes. That would be a great t-shirt. People would not understand though.
No, they wouldn't.
No,
So it's very good.
Yes, brothels and Jesus. I love it. So, okay, so the next book I have is one that we got picked up this last week in Vegas. So this is hard to see with the foil, but The Wrong Bride by Katerina Mora. So this one is an arranged marriage, but not quite. It's angsty. There's some angst in this one. I remember feeling very angsty while reading this one a couple of months back. So this is about Raven. Raven has been in love with Aries is for years. Like she's got a huge crush on him. He's like he's like her best friend, but he's engaged to her sister. So Raven is a model and she has her own clothing line that she's just starting up. And Aries is a millionaire, billionaire, I don't know what he is, but he has a entertainment. He works in entertainment, like he's a producer, not a producer. He owns an entertainment company of some kind. And her sister, Raven's sister, is an actress. And she's engaged to Aries. Now, this arrangement was made by their grandmothers. And originally, Raven was supposed to marry Aries, but Aries started dating the sister years ago. And so the grandmothers said, you know what? You guys are in love, so you guys can get married. Now, they have been close to going down the aisle several different times, but the sister keeps like canceling the wedding or moving the dates. And so now they finally have a date set. We're right before the wedding. And the grandparents say, or grandma says, if you don't show up, if she doesn't show up, then Raven, you are marrying him. We are over this. You have to do it to get your inheritance. Your parents are going to lose all their money, which means that you will lose your investors and you will lose your company as well. And so the day comes where this flighty sister of hers, who just wants to focus on her acting career, decides that she's not going to show up. And because her thought was if she doesn't show up, then they'll just move the marriage again. They'll move the wedding date again, like she's manipulated them into doing several times. And that doesn't happen. The grandma goes through with the promise of making Raven marry Aries. And so they get married. Then a day or two later, sister shows up and is like, wait a minute, but that's my fiance. How could you do this to me? You still love me, Aries. You guys will just get a divorce after a short period of time. You're not going to touch each other and we're going to be okay. But that's not what's happening because Raven has gone to Aries and said, if I'm doing this, or Aries or whatever his name is, if I'm doing this, you're all in and I'm going to be all in and nobody's going to come in between us. We're not cheating on each other and this is going to be a real marriage and I need your promise of making this work. So it gets very angsty because it's her sister, first of all, but it's also another woman coming into their marriage saying, wait, this is mine, not yours. What are you doing? But she's the wife saying, "What? It's mine now, not yours. So what are you doing?" So it was very angsty. It was so good, though. I mean, it was so good. Yeah, angsty.
Okay.
Okay.
So my next book is called Fighting Silence by Ali Martinez, and this is about Till and Eliza. Till and Eliza meet when I think they're about 13 years old, and they both come from not so great homes. Eliza is just kind of like the forgotten child. Like her parents literally forget she exists, so she kind of just does her own thing. Till is in a pretty horrific situation. His mom is an addict and he has little brothers, and he's just trying to make sure that everybody has food on their plate. And basically, just it's a day by day survival. And the two of them end up meeting and become best friends. And as they grow up, they have like other relationships and things because Till really like Eliza is the best thing in his life and he does not want to lose her. So he's like very adamant, like he does not want a relationship. But as they get older, that kind of starts to change a little bit. And then Till learns that he's actually losing his hearing and he's eventually going to go deaf. He's a boxer and he has started to be able to make some money and find kind of a way out of the situation that he's in with boxing. And so losing his hearing is just really brings a whole new level of angst to the whole story because he is like in love with Eliza, and the thought of not being able to hear her anymore is like soul crushing for him. The thought of not being able to box is soul crushing for him. So the story just really packs on the angst and the emotion with what he is facing after already what he has overcome. I really enjoyed this book. I read the next one. I think I still have one more to read in this series. So this does finish, like they get there happily ever after. It is a romance. You don't have to read all the books. So the other books are about his siblings, but it's really good.
It was good. Yeah, it was very good. Okay, so the next book that I have is called Unbreak My Heart, and it's by Nicole Jacqueline. So this is about Kate and Shane. So Kate's parents and Kate's aunt and uncle are both foster parents. They've fostered her whole life. And when she is young, she's probably like, I think 13. It's been a while since I read it. She's about the age of 13 when they decide to foster this boy who is 17, and that is Shane. So her aunt and uncle bring him in. She's attracted to him right off the bat. And they have a few, they have their moments. But he quickly kind of changes his tune as they start to get a little bit older, and they don't get along very well. And then when she goes off to college, as they get older, she brings home her best friend. And Shane and the best friend hit it off immediately. And next thing you know, Shane is leaving for the military, and the best friend and Shane have gotten married. So we fast forward a handful of years later, and Kate is still single, and she's with, still very close to her best friend. Shane is in the military, and he gets deployed quite often, and leaves the wife, the best friend, home alone with their 3 children. And when that happens, Kate comes over and helps take care of the kids. So Kate is the pseudo dad, basically, because Shane is gone so much. He gets deployed all the time. Well, when the book starts out, this all happens in the first chapter, so I'm not giving spoilers here. There is an accident, a car accident, right as Shane gets home from being deployed. And his wife, who is pregnant at the time, is killed in the accident. The baby survives. And so now you have a dad who is gone quite a bit because he's serving our country. And you have Kate, who is always there for the kids. The kids call her Auntie Kate. She knows more about raising them than he does. And he reluctantly, because they don't get along, he reluctantly lets her be a part of their life. But he is not good to her. He is mean to her in a lot of ways. But she has to go along with it because she loves these kids. And he can ultimately say, no, they're mine, not yours. And you don't get to be a part of their lives, even though she's been a part of their lives for so long. And she is basically the other parent. And so this is their story of how they all work that out and what happens between them, and how a love story comes from that. But it's very, very emotional from the first page. I mean, from the get-go, you were in the emotions with this one. All right.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right. My next book definitely brings some angst and the emotions, but I want to read something from the author. This is the author's note. Readers looking for a traditional happy ending should look elsewhere. So, that being said, this book is still fantastic and definitely worth the read, but you have to go into it with that author's note. So, this is Perfect Strangers by J.T. Geisinger. Go in blind. If you have triggers, check the triggers because I don't want, your reading experience not to be phenomenal. If you don't, though, just go in blind because going in blind is going to make this book a fantastic read and help build that angst with it. So this is about Olivia. I'm going to give a very short synopsis because I want you to go in blind. This is about Olivia who goes to Paris for the summer because a tragedy has happened in her life and she has writer's block. She's a writer and she just has not been able to move forward since this tragedy happened. So she goes to stay in Paris at a friend's, I think it's actually her like publicist or something, their apartment over there in Paris. And she meets James. James also has some stuff going on, but we don't really know what's happening there. And they agree to have a first names only summer fling. That is all I'm going to tell you. Take this reading experience and enjoy it for what it's worth. If you do choose to read this, please message us. You can email us at bestiebookreviews@gmail.com. I will be there for you. Read it.
Yep, I need to read it. Mandy's been trying to get me to read this book for a very long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
The next
That's my story.
convincing my bestie to read is just going to be me repeating this book 6 times.
Oh, that would be funny. Okay, so for my last rec, I have Heartbreak Warfare. This is by Heather M. Orgeron and Kate Stewart. So this is somewhat of a love triangle. This is about which not I get it. I don't like love triangles of like the traditional love triangle. So just stick with me here, okay, guys? So this is about Briggs and Katie and Gavin. Anyhow, so Katie is married to Gavin. They're both in the military. They have a 6-year-old son at home, and Katie is being deployed for the first time, and she is having to leave behind her son to go overseas. She is a nurse or a medic, and she's really struggling from the first page to leave her little boy behind and to leave her husband behind. They have a great marriage. They've been married for 7 years. He's a captain or a sergeant, or he's pretty high up in the military. So anyhow, he's home with the son. She's gone. When she gets overseas, she meets Briggs, and he is cocky and he's funny and he has this attraction to her, and he's always trying to get her to hang out with him and his buddies, and he's always trying to lighten the mood, and she's just pining for her son and her husband at home. Her best friend is with her. She's also a medic, and she's over there. And so one day, Briggs and his guys come and say, "Look, we're going to go to this little town, and it's safe. And it's gonna be a day trip. Don't you want to see some of the scenery? You're here, and we promise it's safe. Like you guys have been cleared to go. So do you want to go?" And they say yes. They decide to go. And as they're traveling to this town, something happens. I think it was like a roadside bomb or something goes off, and they are captured. And they are captured for quite a while by the enemy, and they are kept hostage. And then you have where they were each other's, like there's a lot of things that happen in here. There's some bad things that happen in here, but they were there for each other during this time. So when Katie comes home, she's not the same person she was when she left. She's very, very changed. And she has this connection to Briggs, even though nothing intimate happened between them during that time, but she does have a connection to Briggs. But she also loves her husband and her son, and so she's very torn. So this is a heart-wrenching book. It's gut-wrenching. It's you don't come out of these trauma situations the same. So how do you move forward? So
How do you?
I don't know. Okay, so tell me about the last one.
Okay, my last book is probably, I haven't read all of yours, so I can't say it's the angstiest we have, but it's definitely the angstiest I have.
Okay.
It's by one of my absolute favorite authors. So this is No Tomorrow by Carrie Ann Cole. So I thought a lot about how, and this is over 600 pages of pure angst. So I thought a lot about how I wanted to talk about this book, because there's things that happen throughout the story that you can't know going in, basically. So I was like, how do I tell people what this is about? And Jessica's like, just say homeless musician and you should be good. So what I actually have decided to do is I'm just going to read the back to you, because I think that gives you enough information about the book without any spoilers. So normally we don't do this, but for this, I'm going to. So the back says, they say you never forget your first time. Mine was with a homeless musician who effed my brains out under a bridge. Yes, that really does happen in the book. He was my first love, and 14 years later, I still can't get him out of my head. He broke all my rules. He also broke my heart. I watched him climb to stardom, cheering him on from afar, but I was never a fan, just a girl in love. Like a tornado, he spiraled, leaving a path of destruction in his wake. But love conquers all, right? It has to, because here I stand, ravaged and ruined, needing it to be true. We can't go back, but I want to. Back to the park, back to when he sang only for me, before he was famous, before he shattered my heart. I thought I knew everything about him, but I could not have been more wrong. He promised me every tomorrow, and here I am waiting and hoping. again. So this is a book where you're going to want to check triggers, but for the purpose of this video, I'm not going to talk about those triggers because if you don't have them, it's better to go into this blind just knowing what I just told you, but just be prepared for a wild ride. If you do think you have triggers, check them. You can still really enjoy the book without them. Just want to add that, but
Yeah, it was good. And
Carrie Ann Cole can do no wrong in my eyes in what she writes. I love everything she's written, but this one definitely is probably the angstiest.
I remember putting that one off for a long time because I was like, I don't want to read about a homeless musician. But then I think I read the blurb on the back and I was like, oh, maybe I do want to read about a homeless musician.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, it was worth it. The audio, I listened to it. Amazing. It was great. Great. It's been a few years. So I don't know that I have it in me to go back and listen again because it's a lot. But it is good. It is so good. At least right now. So
Okay.
all right, guys. So those are our 10 recs for emotional and angsty reads. So class is dismissed for the week. Next week, what are we doing?
Alien paranormal.
Aliens and paranormal romance. We're going to mix it up. Yeah. Okay.
So make sure you do your homework and check out our videos on Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And while we're doing our Romance 101 all the way through the rest of this year, you will get a video on Wednesday. So tell us, what did you think of this video? Are emotional angsty books for you? If so, tell us all about it. What's one of your favorites? Tell us all the bookish things in those comments. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and the like button.
And we'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.